Welcome to Inspiring Women in Audit, the only podcast celebrating the achievements and journeys of women in the internal audit industry. In each episode, we spotlight the extraordinary stories, insights, and expertise of these dynamic professionals. Our aim is to amplify their voices, inspiring a new generation of women auditors to share their knowledge, experiences, and unique perspectives. Remember to check our show notes for links to our social media channels and to subscribe to the Inspiring Women in Audit newsletter. This podcast is brought to you by I4 Global Results Limited, the audit communication experts, dedicated to transforming your audit reporting and your audit results through communication, optimization, and collaboration. Now, let's dive into this episode of Inspiring Women in Audit.
Welcome, everyone, to Inspiring Women in Audit, the podcast that is dedicated to empowering and uplifting women in the internal audit industry. By amplifying their voices, we aim to encourage women in the audit profession to share their knowledge, experiences, and unique perspectives. I'm your host, Tracy Marquardt, and I'm excited today to have my guest, Farah Eida. Farah currently heads the internal audit function at ADNH Catering in Abu Dhabi, UAE. With nearly a decade of experience within the GCC in internal audit, compliance, risk management, and data analytics, Farah's expertise includes establishing audit departments from scratch, driving proactive audit culture, and championing technology-driven solutions such as data analytics and continuous monitoring. Farah has an MBA and a CFE, a CFC, a GRCP, and a CCAE designation. So lots of training and qualifications. Farah is passionate about empowering others, both within audit and outside the audit industry. She has delivered an inspiring TED Talk titled Give Up or Try Harder, and authored a motivational book titled Unlocking Your Potential, A Journey to Self-Development. And Farah regularly contributes to the Institute of Internal Audit as a subject matter expert and a speaker. So welcome to the podcast, Farah. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Tracy.
I can't wait to dig into some of the topics that we have, but I normally kick off, talking to my guests about their audit origin story, if you want, because I'm very curious about people's paths into internal audit, because it's rarely, I think, what kids dream of becoming. I know I didn't know anything about audit until, I think, fourth year university. So what's your story? How did you end up in the field?
That's such a great question. So, for my case, honestly, like most people as well, I didn't grow up saying I want to be an internal auditor. My journey was a bit different. So, internal audit chose me. I didn't initially set out a specific plan to work in this field. I didn't know what was internal audit actually. I got an opportunity to work as an internal auditor at a very beginning or very start from my career. But when I went to that career, the more I felt involved in that internal audit, path, the more I realized that I was interested. It gives you like a good understanding on how organizations function, where the risks are, and how improvements can be made within the organization as well. So it gives you a holistic overview on the operations. Internal audit gave me the platform to combine elements like, for example, integrity, problem solving, critical thinking. So those elements are very critical in any organization. So over time, what started as a career opportunity for me became something for me that is really interesting.
That's amazing, and what I love about it, I think just the way my brain works is I love that I don't have to do the same thing month in and month out. Like every project is different. You learn something new. You get such a broad perspective of the whole organization.
What I also liked about internal audit, it's not something routine. So you always get to do new stuff. There's always new trends. As we, currently we have this technology IA in place that everyone is looking at, not just as an internal audit function, but as also organization management. They're also looking into that. So every time there's something to look at, there's something new, there's something to learn.
Absolutely. And AI is an interesting topic because I think we can't avoid it. Certainly as individuals, we can't avoid it in our everyday lives. I know I use it all the time. But I think my general feeling, and I don't know what your feeling is on it, is that corporations are a little bit slower to adopt because of the risks involved. And it may, in fact, be holding them back. I don't know how you feel about that.
Correct. There are some advantages and disadvantages into that. So the advantages, it makes our life easier. It's in some simple tasks or repetitive or routine tasks. But there are also disadvantages like being biased, for example, or for example, following a certain path or pattern. So AI is very helpful, but from my perspective, I believe there always should be a human involvement into that aspect.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm all for using AI as support, uh, but one, I don't think should ever rely on it entirely without
Exactly.
any human intervention. So that's my message out there for AI. It's great support, but it doesn't it shouldn't have the final answer for everything. But and I know you work a lot with, technology and data and things. So you probably face those kinds of conversations and those kinds of decisions every day.
Yes, and not only us as internal auditors, but also management, they face these challenges. So it's everywhere as well. Yes.
Recently, you've taken on building an internal audit function from the ground up, which I think is a huge task. It must be very exciting, but a challenge as well. So, what made you decide to choose this role instead of, for example, going to a larger team and saying, I'm just going to slot in here and then go with the flow? Now you've taken on something that you're creating from scratch.
From my perspective, I love a challenge. So for me, building an internal audit function was an opportunity for me to create something impactful. That means that I'm not just setting up a governance framework or introducing risk-based auditing. So I'm crafting a culture in place. I'm crafting a vision and a credibility for the entire department. This has allowed me to shape a function that wasn't just about being a compliance function. It's about also being a supporter to management and to the organization because it helps fulfill our opportunity to grow as well. I know when you build it from scratch is totally different when there is already an internal function and it has been mature for a very long time. Either ways, it is an opportunity, but for me, it is a different type of opportunity. Let's put it per se.
So can I dig into that a little bit? Because if there was no internal audit function there before, then all of a sudden you come in and you've got to start building relationships with the rest of the business. Can you talk about that a little bit and just kind of the opportunities or challenges that you might have faced so far?
So yes, definitely there would be some challenges, and in every opportunity or every position, whether if it was from scratch or if there was a team as well. But I think what would be different in terms of a challenge is that they're not used to having an internal audit function in-house. That is maybe the perspective or the different perspective than having an internal function for a very long time into the organization. So adapting and getting used to management is maybe it's not a challenge, but it's more of just needs time to build that relationship.
Mhm. So can I ask, like, how did you go about building the relationships? And maybe, like, how big is your organization? There must be multiple levels of hierarchy within the organization. How does one, like, kinda walk in the door and say, "Hey, we're internal audit," or "I'm internal audit. I'm building this function. This is what we do, and this is why we're a good thing for you."
The organization is huge. It operates in the Middle East as well, so it's not just UAE. So um, that's a really good question in a sense that you have to initiate that awareness or that initiative. So that means being proactive with the senior management, telling them, "Hey, if there's anything up, please let us know. We're here to support." That's one way of putting it. And another way of putting it as well is to be involved in leadership meetings, maybe having awareness sessions, periodic awareness sessions as well to to build that maturity, internal maturity in place, right? So uh, being involved in leadership meetings to talk about internal audit, being proactive in a sense that going to management, interacting with them, not at a work perspective. I mean, also it can be interaction at a personal level, so that they feel that we're here to support.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's a great opportunity because sometimes when you walk in and there's been an established function, and sometimes there's a perception built of it's just compliance or it's a bit of policing or, that kind of negative stereotype that tends to be out there sometimes for some audit teams. And then it's a different challenge. I mean, they're both opportunities when you walk in the door. One is changing hearts and minds, but from what it was, and yours is maybe creating that vision and not changing hearts and minds, but bringing them along with you.
And also, Tracy, to add to what you're saying, is that, as you mentioned, maybe you will have, for example, an internal audit function that is already mature in place. So there's already that perception in place. So having that perception and then changing it is more difficult than building it. This is, I don't know, in my perspective. Changing something is more difficult than building it. Building it is the first perception and it goes on if you build it right.
If you build it right, right? And that's what I feel coming from you is that you're gonna build it right, right? When we talk about audit culture and those kinds of things. So I think that's brilliant. So I want to kind of ask you, I hope it's not a touchy subject, but I'm interested in your experience as a younger leader in audit. Obviously, on the podcast, we have guests of all ages. And I'm wondering if you found that your age being a little bit younger in the spectrum has helped you in some ways.
Being younger has definitely brought up some advantages. So one would be being adaptable to new technologies, for example, or open to fresh ideas. So this has helped me to bring innovation into internal audit. We are always looking for new trends, new analysis, new ideas. AI is one of them as well. So, but at the same time, credibility is something you have to earn as well, right? Some of the senior stakeholders or management, they want to see experience, not just enthusiasm. That said, you would want to work with senior management is a bit, it can be tricky sometimes, in a sense that you need to build that credibility in place as well, which takes time.
It does. I think that's the only thing. It does take time. But when you start showing them the results as you go along, I think that's gonna make a huge difference and really add to your credibility. Is there an experience you can talk about, working with maybe senior stakeholders or that kind of thing where you can kind of because what I'm thinking is there are going to be young professionals in the industry in in your kind of age bracket who want to lead, who want to step in and build something instead of maybe following along what other somebody else has built and kind of sliding in there. So, are there any kind of challenges that you can talk about that you've kind of overcome and in a way give advice to the rest of our listeners who
So
want that?
something that I actually learned is that it's not about being right. It's about you have to bring people with you into your journey, right? So trust is very important to build of course, along with the technical competency, but also through relationships. So by showing you by showing them that you're there for them and to support them, that will help them succeed. So I've also learned that, as you mentioned, Tracy, just right now, that delivering results when they actually see the results, or when you listen in details with them and you align your recommendations with their strategic objectives or goals, so that will also have or support in adding value. And I believe, so overall, I believe building that trust is about showing that you understand their challenges and you're there for them to offer that advice.
Nice. Now, I'm guessing that you've learned a lot about yourself as you stepped into this role and you're growing in this role. What's the most surprising thing you've learned about yourself?
Maybe the most surprising thing that I have learned is how much leadership is about emotional intelligence. So it's not just about the technical skill, which is important, but it's also more important to to understand or to know how you connect with your team and how you handle pressure. So being authentic, being, for example, vulnerable, will make you a very strong leader, not a weak one. When you're leading a function, you may face some pushbacks. You might have some tough conversations, but early on, I thought leadership would be more on having the best technical answer, but in reality, or technically, or honestly speaking, it's about empathy or adaptability. So it's not just, for example, being a superhero or always having, as I mentioned earlier, the right answers. It's about being a human, showing your team that together we can find a solution to anything.
I think it comes back to those communication skills, is asking the right questions and really listening to the answers and really trying to understand where they're coming from.
And drafting your questions as well.
So you prepare in advance your questions.
Sometimes, in some cases, and of course, in some cases, conversations just come all
Yeah,
of a sudden. So yeah, you'll have to just go with the flow. But you would already know how would you tailor your questions, or how would you give an answer to if someone says a question, for example. So you know how to tailor what you're saying, basically.
absolutely. And I'm a preparer as well. So I would anyway like write down my top 5 questions. And even though you're going in and having a conversation and it is flowing and it's spontaneous and all those things, it's taking off from those questions. I would still know my key 5, because that way I can make sure that I get the result I want. Because I mean, for some of us are more preparers and planners than others for sure. But that's one of the ways that I contribute to being successful, I think, is to make sure I know what I want to ask or what is the key outcomes that I want to have, and then go in and be your spontaneous self, you know?
And exactly, also, tailoring that questions in place, it also enhances you as an individual on how are you going to propose your questions and answers in advance or in the future. So it also builds your soft skills as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the skills that's come up in a lot of the training I've done in the last 2 years, with a certain, group that I'm working with is thinking on your feet, right? And I think that comes with experience in a way. I don't know, how do you feel about thinking on your feet?
That's true, actually. I do agree. It comes with experience. So every time maybe you face a challenge, and maybe it's not in the way of you mentioned the question, but it's more on the way how when you, because of course, when you're dealing with different stakeholders, every stakeholder has a different way or methodology of speaking, or you can say more or less like a style of talking. So you need to kind of tailor it to the style that they prefer, right? So that comes with experience. When you meet more people, when you discuss with more stakeholders, that's where you'll be able to, as you mentioned, like adjust it on spot, as we say.
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking on your feet and being able to just react to the dynamic situation around you. So you prepare for what you expect to happen, and then you have to operate dynamically once you're in that situation. So that I think that's a sign of a great auditor as well. All right, so let me talk to you about technology and innovation because I know you're on the tech side of things, the data analytics and continuous monitoring things. So you recently spoke about data analytics at an IIA conference, and I'm wondering, just to lay the foundation, is like what excites you about how technology is changing the audit profession?
What excites me the most is how technology is turning internal audit function as a reactive function to a proactive one. So technology now is no longer seen as a nice to have. It's foundational, or it's very important, or it's critical to have. So with tools like analytics, we can identify risks in real time. We can visualize trends. We can add predictive insights. Not just internal audit functions, but also organizations as well are looking into that, right? So I'm not sure if you're aligned to what also I mentioned, if you're on the same page.
Yeah, I think I truly believe that every company is a technology company today. So it leads me to a question about auditors and technology skills because whenever I go and work with a client, there's always like auditors and then IT auditors.
Correct.
Or when the lines are going to be fully blurred, and it's just that every auditor is expected to have those IT skills. Do you think that day's coming?
People are adapting, or I see around me, like people are willing to go into that because, honestly speaking, I do believe that there is a gap on having that IT required skills in place, especially not from knowledge perspective, but also from a experience perspective. So putting that uh, knowledge on ground. So that's, I believe, is one of the main challenges, not also like here in our in our area, but again, I believe that people are looking into that, but it's more of adapting that experience.
Absolutely. But I think the more auditors are able to handle the tech side of things, the better equipped we're going to
I
be to get
agree.
the results, you know?
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
have you had any aha moments where you're using technology and it really transformed the audit that you're working on?
Maybe one of the aha moments would be for me is, during any operational audit, let's say if we're taking procurement as an example, where we use analytics, we use it to map invoice patterns, let's say, right? We detect those issues that manual sampling would have completely missed, right? Having that insights or that knowledge in place could lead to cost saving, for example. It could lead to stronger controls. So this shows the power of combining technology with audit instance or audit knowledge or technology knowledge. I think we're living through a transformative era in internal audit. This excites me the most, that how data analytics enables auditors or internal auditors to move from the basic skills to something that they foresee on the future. We, as I mentioned, we can spot patterns, emerging risks much earlier when we do that. So the moment that showed me with analytics, internal audit isn't about, giving assurance anymore. It's about delivering strategic um, initiatives as well.
I think so too. And I think data analytics it has just really opened up the world of results, if I can say that, because I know when I was an auditor, we didn't have any of this. And we were doing random samples, or maybe we were lucky enough to be doing statistical sampling, but that was it, right? And now you can test uncountable transactions and see the patterns, see fraud, see indications of fraud that you want to go and investigate further. And we just didn't have all that. So I think that's brilliant. So
It
we-
honestly makes it even a lot easier for us. So in terms of sample selection, even in some cases, we take full population. So we try our best to do it through that analytics in terms of testing, and wherever not applicable, let's say from the governance, for example, perspective, that's where you have to, have that human intervention in place. But we do try our best to apply data analytics because it helps a lot. It saves time. It gives better results as well.
if it's all right, I'd like to switch to talk about this, which is your book, which
Yeah.
I ordered and read this past week. Again, it's called Unlocking Your Potential, A Journey to Self-Development. And it's available on Amazon. We will put the link in the show notes so that everyone can grab a copy of it. And I love the book. And so if I can just for a moment, just talk about it for a minute. Um, my 25-year-old self would have been so much better off had she read this book, to be honest, because in my younger days, I wasn't aware of all the things that you talk about. As I read it now, at my wizened years, there are a lot of things that I do recognize, but there were some great reminders too. And I thought, oh, I'll tell her which are my favorite chapters.
Yes.
Uh, so there are 10 chapters in the book. I have 8 chapters written down. I have like 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. So there's a lot going on in the book. And I love, you start with understanding yourself. And I think, you know, in the first half of my life, I didn't really understand that I even needed to do that. Right. So Setting meaningful goals, which I talk about a lot in my LinkedIn posts. Great. Building positive habits. I am still working on that. So even though there were a lot of topics that, that at this age I'm more familiar with, I still need to work on some of those things like building positive habits and the mindfulness, right? Mindfulness, gratitude, effective communication, which I love. Of course, where we have a lot in common there. Nurturing relationships, we have a lot in common there in terms of what we believe in. Continuous learning, which of course um, a lot of auditors do. So I think this is wonderful for people who are struggling, unhappy, frustrated with life or parts of their life, or not sure where to go in their career. They're kind of looking for some direction. So, but it's also a good reminder for those of us who have mastered some of the topics. It's like a nudge to continue to work on some of those other topics. So I loved it. Um, and again, my 25-year-old self would have been so grateful to have had this book in her hands. So it's essentially a practical guide to personal growth. Maybe you might call it a roadmap to clarifying your goals, building positive habits, and overcoming challenges to become your best self, which I know, a lot of the folks in my community and on LinkedIn and your community, I mean, we all resonate together because we believe in some of the same things, right? Like our beliefs and values kind of overlap to some degree. And so becoming your best self and continuous learning, I think, is just part of who we are as within that community. So I'd like to ask you just first, what inspired you to do this and to share this with the world?
First of all, thank you for your feedback. Appreciate it. Um, Writing the book, Unlocking Your Potential, was a personal passion for me. So the inspiration came from my own journey of growth. And plus, it was always in my bucket list to do a book. So over the years, I've seen, as you mentioned, so many talented people, other than the ones in the technical fields like internal audit, but that struggle self-confidence or goal setting and personal growth, especially at a younger age. I wanted, as you mentioned, to create a guide to help people clarify their goals, build positive habits, and unlock their potential. And also to add, like within internal audit, I feel there are several areas that we need to look at from a soft skill perspective. That is how I got motivated to do my book.
I definitely think, well, number one, just about the motivation, I think that's amazing that number one was on your bucket list, and number two, you've done it. So my challenge to you, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to do the next book. Yeah, because I'd like to see what happens next.
Maybe, why not? Yeah.
It'll come, but I think
Thank
once you've
you.
done one, you know, there's more because you have so much more um in your life to experience and to achieve and to, even fail and then achieve. And so I think another book would be a wonderful companion. But if we can like take the book to the audit community for a bit, because obviously there are some things that I've already identified that auditors can take from this. From your perspective, how can this book help and support our audit community?
If we take the internal audit community specifically, I believe there are two main key areas. The first one is self-awareness, because internal auditors, they do need emotional intelligence, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, to navigate, tough conversations and influence that change, not only for to management, but also around other internal auditors, right? So that is also impactful. Second would be continuous improvements. For internal auditors, the book gives like a framework, you can say, or a guide for developing a personal growth plan. This mirrors what do we do for audit plans, for example, but it applies to you as a career and life. So it's like applying audit plan into our personal lives. The main message I want to convey is, if we invest in ourselves, or the way we invest in our organizations, the possibilities are endless, right? So which I think later we'll talk about. So this is also linked to my discussions or to my other webinars and TEDx talks. Having that motivation. I know it's hard. It's not. It's easier said than done, but always try to have a positive impact or a positive image to try to get to where you're coming from. So that yeah. So I hope this book would help others to do so, not only for the internal audit community, but for rest as well.
And I think it will. I think it will. So you've talked about understanding yourself, which I think is so, so important. Um, um, and then continuous learning. And I have to say, in my journey in life, I probably started at 27 to understand myself and where my gaps were. And once I did that, like I've spent the intervening time, I won't tell you how many years between now and when I was 27, working every day on what I understand are my communication shortfalls or my emotional intelligence shortfalls or whatever those are. And it's made a huge difference, I think, to my satisfaction and my happiness and my career. So I think those are great places to start. I also love, I'm just going to drop these for our audit community. Chapter 7 is effective communication, and chapter 9 is nurturing relationships. So don't forget those, because building and nurturing those relationships within internal audit is so, so important to be successful. So great book. Thank you so much for sharing it with the world. I do appreciate it. But I do want to turn to the TED Talk, because you did a TEDx talk. Um, I think it was about 5 years ago, 2020 or so. And, number one, I think it's quite an accomplishment to give a TEDx talk, number one, right? Um, just to have the internal drive to actually get on stage like that and share a message. So the title of the talk is Give Up or Try Harder. Great title. You have two choices in life. You you can give up or you can try harder. So what's the main message? What underlies that title?
First of all, if I think you would notice as well that the book and the TEDx talk are interlinked together. So again, it comes from like I was inspired to give a talk because the challenges I faced earlier in my career. So there were a lot of moments that I felt like, okay, should I just keep going or should I just give up? I had a lot of like doubts in the sense that maybe it's not right for me to do that, or maybe no, it's a challenge for me to even try even harder to accomplish what I want. There were moments where things didn't go according to plan, of course, like everyone else, where the doors would close and doubts, would creep in. But I realized that persistence, for example, uh, often determines success. So having that mindset in place that you can give up or you can try harder, there is always that choice. So what motivated me to do that talk initially, honestly, is because I always got confused or always got hesitant, like should I actually try harder or should I it's not for me, I shouldn't maybe continue with that.
And I think it's I guess having experienced so much of life so far, I can honestly say that there are times when you need to cut your losses and say, okay, I've at this point, this path isn't going to get me. If I keep going, I'm just going to be beating my head against the wall. But there are other times where I don't know if you've seen that kind of cartoon where, there's a miner digging for gold and there's, like, a wall of dirt and the gold is, like, right behind is, like, 6 inches of dirt and he's given up, because he's so tired of digging and trying to get to the pot of gold, and everyone's pot of gold looks different, let's face it, right? Um, it's not just money. So I do feel, and especially having my own business, I do feel like sometimes, you just need to believe, you know? You need to believe that this is the right choice. And when you believe that, and you have confidence in that, then you can go forward and get through that last 6 inches. But it is choices. It's all about the choices. So, given that, um, how do we take that to audit? So what do you want your audit community to take? So we're going to put a link to your TED Talk too in the show notes. So when our audit community goes and watches that TED Talk, what do you want them to take from it?
So having for internal auditors, so having this mindset of giving up or trying harder is very critical because we do face resistance when we recommend, for example, changes or improvements, right? Everyone does. So if we stayed adaptable and focused on the bigger mission and our main objective, I believe we can achieve, results, even if it takes time or even if we face those resistance.
Let me ask you then, being I'm a woman of a certain age, you're a woman of a certain other age. What advice would you give to younger women? I'll say younger, not young, younger women just starting out in audit who might want to follow a path like yours. Um,
Maybe my key takeaways or my key advices would be, first is to come out of your comfort zone. So I know it's not easy, but growth happens when you take on challenges, even if you fail. Get up, get going, so that it means that you're trusting yourself and you want to try your best, and you don't want to end up saying, "Oh, I wish it tried," right? So you don't want to have that doubt in place. It's better than um, having that say, like, and like, for example, saying, "Oh, okay, I've tried at least," So coming out of that comfort zone is one. A second thing would be seek out professionals, seek out mentors. Don't be shy, and not just the formal ones. Like anyone you can learn from. It's fine. Everyone is here to help. This is another takeaway, and being an internal auditor, and at a leadership level, is not about knowing everything. What I have learned, it's about being adaptable, fostering collaboration, and making informed decisions. So the more you develop these quantities, the more impactful your audit career will be.
it sounds to me like it all comes down to like mindset and communication skills and really knowing where you want to be and where you want to go. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And you've achieved so much in your career already. So what keeps you motivated to continue growing and challenging yourself?
Um, I believe, I guess, when I have that deep sense of purpose, truly believe that, let's say, internal audit can drive positive change within an organization, not just organizations, but also for me as well personally. So I'm also passionate about learning. So there's always something new to learn. There's always a new technology, new skill, for example, or a new challenge to tackle. Growth is a lifelong journey, and I'm excited to always keep evolving because every new challenge is an opportunity to grow. It's not just about being professional or so, but also as a person. So I find that incredibly energizing.
That's amazing. And I want to ask you too, because you work with the IIA right now. Maybe you can first tell us a little bit about what you're doing with the IIA right now.
So I used to work with the IIA in terms of being a speaker in one of their virtual conferences, and the other one is being a subject matter expert in a content creation for a course online, which is effective communication for internal audit, which is interlinked to our discussion today. And speaker event was about data analytics as well. So I guess these two topics were interlinked to our podcast today.
And I can see, I think once a speaker for the IIA, kind of always a speaker for the IIA, right? So as you grow and develop in your career, I totally foresee that you're going to be on more stages in our industry talking about, those subjects or other subjects as well. So I'm wondering, is that also within your vision for yourself of continuing service to the audit community?
Definitely, for sure. I'm always into that. Even not also the internal audit, and the Institute of Internal Audit, but also to our internal audit community, like locally as well. So yes, it gives us opportunity not just to learn, it also gives us an opportunity to network with different internal auditors, not within just the GCC, but international as well.
Absolutely. And networking is so important and it's fun, you know? If you had asked me 25 years ago, if going to a conference would be fun, I would have said absolutely not. But because it all depends on how we're wired, right? And my brain is perhaps not wired initially to enjoy that kind of experience and getting out there and getting into a room and introducing myself to people. But I have rewired my brain over time to be able to just dive in and really enjoy every single moment of it. So it's important for ourselves and it's important for our communities as well.
It's getting out of that bubble as well.
It is. And it does take you outside your comfort zone sometimes, depending on how your wiring is, right? So,
Correct.
well, listen, Farah, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today. It was an amazing experience. Number one, with your book, I'll show it again, called Unlocking Your Potential, A Journey to Self-Development, just to find out about where you've been in your career so far. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the future for you.
Thank you so much, and thank you again for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward. Yes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Inspiring Women in Audit podcast. We'd love for you to stay part of our growing community, so subscribe wherever you're listening. If you're enjoying our content on platforms like iTunes or Spotify, a quick 5-star rating from you would mean the world to us. It's a small action that supports our mission immensely. Don't forget to explore the show notes for various links and join our vibrant community on all our social media platforms. Your interaction and support play a crucial role in amplifying the voices of inspiring women in audit and spreading their inspiring stories even further. Thank you for being a part of our journey, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the Inspiring Women in Audit podcast.